Well, welcome to this video where I'm going to be showing you how to get started making a PacMan game in Scratch, very much like the one that you see on the screen now. And we're going to be making this in Scratch 3. So if you've seen some of my previous videos for this series where it showed you how to do it in Scratch 2 and you're having some difficulty translating that to Scratch 3, then this is the series for you. So let's get started by loading up a brand new project in Scratch. So here I am in my brand new project, and one of the first things I'm going to do is want to name this project so that I can know what game it is when I'm working on it later. So I'm going to name this one PacMan 2019, and now I can get rid of the cat sprite as well. So I'm just going to click on the little bin icon, and that gets rid of the cat. And we need to create a new sprite for our PacMan. So if we hover over this icon here, go up to Paint and click, and it will create a new sprite that immediately I'm going to name PacMan so that later in my game I can refer to that sprite by name. Now, in order to draw our PacMan, we need to draw two states, one with the mouth open, one with the mouth closed, and we're going to start by drawing the mouth closed first. We want to work in bitmap mode for this, so we're going to convert to a bitmap, and you'll see that things change ever so slightly. You've got fewer options on the screen, and we're going to use the circle tool, and we're going to change our fill color. Now traditionally PacMan is yellow, but you can make him any color you like. And once you've chosen your color, if you see this point here, this is the center point. You want to get your circle around that center point as close as possible, and if you click and drag, you'll see that you can draw it as a squishy shape. If you hold the shift key while you're dragging, you'll get a perfect circle. So I'm going to make a nice big circle for this, and I'm going to move it so that it's pretty much in the center of my sprite. And there's one extra thing we need to do. We need to add a little dot. I'm going to use a block for this of a different color. Can make it any color you like, as long as it's not the same as the background color for your maze when you come to draw that later. So I'm going to make it sort of an orange color. And you can just add this little dot, not too far away from PacMan, but maybe just about there. And this is a detector block that's going to be used to detect when PacMan is colliding with walls. So you might be a bit frustrated, you might think, well, that's a bit ugly, but when we make PacMan smaller, it'll be less obvious. And actually, you can also make it the same color as the background for the whole game. So not the walls of the maze, but let's say you've decided to have a black background. You could later come and color this in black so you can't see it so easily. Okay, let's name this costume closed, because this is our closed state of PacMan. Let's right click, duplicate, and on the new one that's called closed 2, we're going to call this open. And now what I need to do is I'm going to zoom in slightly, and we're going to use the line tool to draw lines where the mouth is going to be. Now it doesn't matter what color you choose for this, as long as it's not the same as the yellow color or whatever color you've used for PacMan's body. So I'm just going to stick with the orange color I've got, and I'm going to draw a line out to the edge and another line out to the edge. And I'm just going to zoom in and make sure I've really gone to the very edge of the PacMan, because I don't want to leave any gaps. Might just make that a little bit bigger just to be careful. And if I zoom out a bit, I'm now going to use the paint bucket tool. I'm going to change the fill to this color or this option here, which is actually transparent. And if I click now in that wedge, it'll disappear. Now you might quite like the fact that you've got a slightly different color here, but I would like that to be the same as my original coloring. So to do that, I'm just going to go back to my fill options. I'm going to use this paint selector tool, color selector tool, and hover over my original color of PacMan. And that's now changed my fill color to match the body of PacMan. And if I go to my paint bucket again, zoom in and click in click on these lines, they will change to be the exact same color as PacMan's body. It's really important though that you don't make the sort of detector block the same color as PacMan's body, otherwise our code won't work later on. Right, so that's made our PacMan with our two states, closed and open. Let's add some code to make that open and closing mouth animated. So we're going to want this to start at the very beginning of our program, which happens when people press the green flag. So for that, we can go to Events, and I can choose when green flag is clicked. Let me zoom in a bit. So when the green flag is clicked, I want to begin a process that's going to see my mouth open and close, and to do that continuously. And that's going to involve switching between these two costumes in a loop. So the loop that I'm going to use, if I go down to here, is I don't want it just to happen 10 times. I want it to happen always. So I'm going to use a forever loop. And I'm going to join that onto my when green flag is clicked button. So when I press the green flag, this loop's going to start, and whatever code I put in here will repeat continuously. And the code that I want to put in there is one to change costumes. If I go to looks, and there's quite a few options for changing costumes, but I want the next costume. So it just rotates round between those two costumes. So let's see what happens if I press the green flag now. You'll see that PacMan does change costumes, but it's incredibly quick. We need to add some kind of delay, otherwise you'll never see the effect. So let's go back to control, and you'll see that there's one that says wait 1 second. So let's put that in there. So it's going to, in a repeated loop, it's going to change costume, wait a second, and then do the next one. Wait a second, do the next one. Let's see how this looks by pressing the green flag. Well, that has created the effect, but it's a bit slow. So maybe we want to change this amount. And you might want to experiment, but I've always found 0.2 seconds to be a good amount. So we've created our PacMan Sprite, we've got it animated with an open and closing mouth, and we've got our color detector block ready to detect our walls of our maze. All I'd like to do now is just add some code to make PacMan change direction when I press the arrow keys on the keyboard. So to do that, I'm going to go back to Events, and I'm going to use this one that says when space key is pressed. I'll drag that over, but I'm going to change this to be the up arrow, so when the up arrow key is pressed. And when that happens, I want to change direction of PacMan. So for that I go to Motion, because motion affects how the sprite moves, and I'm going to use point in direction 90. Now 90 degrees points to the right, so I don't want that. I actually want 0 degrees, which points upwards to north. So I'm going to say when up arrow is pressed, point north. And if I right click on this top one, I can duplicate both of those blocks, and now I can choose when down arrow is pressed, and I'm going to make that 180 or south. I'm going to right click duplicate again. This time I'm going to say when the right arrow key is pressed, point 90 degrees to the right, and duplicate one more time. When the left arrow key is pressed, drag that all the way around to -90. So we can test that by now using our arrow key, so up, down, left, right, and if I start my animation, you'll see his mouth moves as well. So I've now got my PacMan pointing in all 4 directions, and his mouth is animated. The only thing I might want to do now is make PacMan a little bit smaller. So here where I've got size 100, I can change that to maybe 20, and that gives me a smaller PacMan on my screen, ready to put into my maze, which is what we're going to do in our next video.